Megastructures. A term that is familiar to some, yet alien to many. The fear of the unknown drives us to envision things beyond our comprehension and can evoke feelings of helplessness, insignificance, yet also a strange spark for curiosity. In that sense, seeing what we can't comprehend is perfect for the sort of psychological horror that encapsulates the concept of megastructures. But what are megastructures? In a broad sense, they can be defined as titanic artificial constructs, expanded beyond the realm of what humans can possibly achieve, and are often depicted in fiction as endless, abandoned, and dystopian. Therefore, in this video, I will take 3 pieces of media that explore the concept of megastructures, 1 horror universe, 1 manga, and 1 game, and look deeper into what makes a megastructure and why we find it so truly terrifying. You live on the 556th floor of building P46. Last night, there was a Samosbor again. Even your floor was overwhelmed. You're afraid to go out into the entrance because someone is groaning there. Liquidators will arrive in a couple of hours at best. The smell of raw meat begins to seep into the room. These were the starting lines in which this horror universe began to develop. Samosbor is an internet horror universe started and popularized on the Russian 4chan-like website, Dvach. Set in a dystopian universe where its inhabitants occupy a megastructure known as the Giga Khrushchevka, a seemingly infinitely stacked set of communist Russian apartments, the people within must endure the challenges of daily survival along with the mysterious and deadly purple fog known as the Samosbor. Not much is known of its origins, but many have built upon the idea that it is a random event that can occur on certain floors of the megastructure, and those on that floor must take shelter behind air-pressurized doors, otherwise you'll be consumed by the distorting and hostile effects of the purple fog, which apparently smells like raw meat, by the way. After which, the party, the governing body of the Giga Khrushchevka, sends its liquidators to deal with its effects. Although most can agree on this simple and widely known conceptual framework, there is no set law, as since this is a collective world-building universe, there is no one interpretation on how the Samosbor universe should be. This is very much like the Backrooms started and popularized on 4chan, only for it to evolve into a collective internet world-building experience. While I could make an entire video dedicated to exploring the Samosbor horror universe, I'm here to look closer at how this media portrays its Soviet-style megastructure. The Khrushchevka in Giga Khrushchevka, the name of this megastructure, refers to the widely popularized post-World War II Soviet apartment block that focused more on a utilitarian design. Every square inch of the apartment was utilized and was notorious for its tiny kitchens and grungy design, leading to what we refer to nowadays as a Duma aesthetic. With this very depressive style, it is no wonder why the megastructure itself feels so lifeless, devoid of joy in an infinitely expanding concrete pillar. In many depictions and interpretations of it, any windows that may exist only point towards other buildings with an empty space in the middle, practically being zoned off from seeing the outside world, if there is one. Both up and down extend with no end in sight, and with no way of knowing the true extent of it. You are just trapped in an endless apartment building for the rest of your life alongside the looming danger of the Samosbor. While you may not be trapped per se, as you can move freely between floors, there is no point in the end. Moving around has no meaning in this universe. You could go up or down, across floors, into other apartments. It would be all more or less the same, except the occasional blocks that include things such as medical centers, factories, and so on. At some point, you stop questioning this existence, who made it and why it exists, only for you to settle down and focus on surviving another day in the Giga Khrushchevka and against the deadly purple fog. You are just another one in the long line of zeros, helpless and complacent with the hand you are dealt. From the screen to the pages, Blame is a 1997 Japanese post-apocalyptic science fiction manga created by the author Tsutomu Nihei. It follows the story of Kili, a synthetic human who wanders across the vast expanse of a megastructure called the City. His journey takes him across various unforgiving locations, and with the help of his accomplice Chibo, they are tasked with the insurmountable objective to search for the net terminal gene. This gene was once used as an authenticator, allowing humans to access and control the net sphere, a virtual domain within the city and which controlled the builders. However, it is widely believed that a cult known as the Order bypassed the safeguard of the netsphere and uploaded a virus that ultimately deleted the net terminal gene from all humanity, essentially cutting off their access to the netsphere, and began to be targeted by cyborgs known as Silicon Life as a response by the safeguard. This led to the builders of the city to build chaotically and indefinitely without instruction from humanity, and leading to the rapid expansion and development of the titanic megastructure. This provides Kili with an objective and danger: recover the possibly extinct net terminal gene, all the while avoiding the hostility of the Silicon Life, who are by nature, or code to say the least, designed and mandated to eliminate all human life, essentially being seen as a virus on the megastructure. This manga is something truly unique. It provides a world and environment that is grand and rich in its creative elements, yet the story that is presented is widely considered vague and confusing, to say the least. But this was ultimately the intention of Nihei. He wanted to present a universe where you're looking through the perspective of a minuscule life form, similar to how an ant would interpret the greater world. Making sense of all of it seems such an impossible task. The same sentiment can also apply to how we look at the universe beyond our solar system. We can try to look beyond and understand it, but making sense of it will always end in futility. Without going too deep into this concept, Blame perfectly captures this raw feeling of curiosity and fear, trying to understand, yet never being able to do so. Now, what about the megastructure that is presented to us? The first thing I can passionately say is that the artwork is truly stunning. The panels in the manga depict a barren, lifeless, and artificial landscape that is trying to mimic architecture that feels familiar to us. Yet it is odd, and in some ways uncanny. In some pages it shows a very high-tech design, while in others more traditional and decrepit. It goes to show that there are no limits to how the city is built or portrayed in the manga. Even when trying to understand its true scale, there is no accurate way of doing so, as it seems to stretch out almost indefinitely. The city seems to be one gigantic organism, artificial in nature, yet metabolic in another. You truly feel like a pest, irritating a much larger life form. And this is the beauty or horror of the megastructure presented. The awareness that you are not in control, knowing that while humanity has failed, the city lives on. This is one of Nihei's greatest achievements, the psychological horror of existentialism, trying to find meaning in a meaningless world. We often think that the more a society technologically develops, it gains more value, yet Blame flips that perspective entirely on its head. Even though the premise is set far into the future with technology that is beyond our current understanding, value seems to be entirely lost. There is no value in this pathway or that doorframe, it just exists. And this is why Blame's depiction of a megastructure is so truly fascinating, yet chilling to me. You've been captured and enslaved by the facility and tasked with retrieving blood from overgrown brains from the depths of an ancient megastructure. But you may not be alone down there. Will you accept your fate or find a way to escape? Abrasion is a first-person indie horror game set in a brutal and skyless megastructure. There is no proper introduction or story, as you are simply thrown into an underground maze of industrial-like corridors, rooms, and pathways, home to an almost endless supply of oil. Equipped with a lamp, you have no choice but to venture forth into the darkness with no way of knowing what awaits you. A strange fog permeates the air, an atmosphere so suffocating it puts you on edge. The grungy, depressing aesthetic combined with PS1 style graphics distorts and attacks nostalgic familiarity. The further you explore this megastructure and unlock new areas, you are sprinkled with logs of other workers who fell victim to either the environment or the creatures that roam this megastructure. In this way, the game is not shoving lore and story into your face, but rather is there for people curious enough to explore and understand. And this is the beauty of this game and megastructures in general. Understanding it is not necessary. A story is not essential. Something I will discuss in detail in my analysis. As you progress through the game, you learn the megastructure's ancient properties, hinting of a history that is lost to time, questioning the very origins of this world. Who built this? When was it built? How was it built? But the information the game provides you is very vague and ambiguous, creating a sense of mystery for the player to envision themselves. After overcoming several obstacles and obtaining the elevator code to escape the facility, you rise to a land that thematically seems similar to the underground. Upon wandering forward, you encounter a strange figure, an entity with what seems to be two horns. The architect the game makes reference to several times. It is seen commanding the structures in front of it, almost as a god shaping the land, and after a short puzzling monologue, the game ends. There is no doubt that there is a much deeper story and mystery to be found here, but my focus for this video is the megastructure itself. When looking closer at the environment the game presents, it immediately jumps out as carrying that sort of steampunkish aesthetic. Concrete slabs, metal pipes, industrial architecture. But there is also another side to this. While a lot of what you come across is industrial, it is mixed with what seems to be ancient architecture, an ancient society lost in time, only for it to be discovered in the future. This adds layers of mystery and intrigue to the story of the game, encouraging us to keep exploring and searching for an explanation or an overall meaning to what we come across. In many regards, the atmosphere has a very sort of Silent Hill vibe to it, an eeriness that I can't quite shake when playing through the game. Even though you feel alone for most of the game, you are constantly on edge. And while, yes, there is a monster hunting you, the real horror is derived from the design of the megastructure. You are mostly alone, but you just can't shake the feeling that something is watching you. This, coupled with a feeling of insignificance when looking at the grandeur of the megastructure and its many endless voids, scratches an itch when analyzing psychological horror. Understanding megastructures in itself can be quite a challenge. There is no real-world comparison to be drawn, and understanding its intricacies heavily relies on personal interpretations. But one thing most people can agree on is its effects on human emotions, curiosity bordering existential dread. In relation to the three media discussed in this video, each have their own respective take on what it means to create a megastructure. How does the megastructure invoke the concept of horror in both a shared and unique way? To answer this, I have compiled what I deemed the 4 pillars of megastructures. Starting with the first pillar, the absence of storytelling. Storytelling is a vital component for many pieces of literature and creative works, and in most cases cannot even exist without a story or plot present. Megastructures work differently, however. Instead of being rooted in a universe filled with characters, locations, backgrounds, establishing a story for a world with a megastructure itself is not essential. In fact, I argue that such worlds thrive in an absence of a concrete story or plot. It invokes a stronger sense of mystery and curiosity for the reader and/or viewer, and many megastructure universes can work just perfectly without one, because the main goal for such pieces of work is not to explain the world, but rather show it, and in some cases trying to explain it becomes meaningless, as if you're asking yourself, what is the point of trying to convey a message? Take Abrasion, for example. You are simply thrown into an endless world, and while you are given objectives in order to progress the game, there is no overall substance into why you are doing what you are doing, let alone understanding the megastructure itself. We are informed that this megastructure is ancient, but who built it? What are these life forms that roams its halls? What is the facility, and why did it put you down there? What is the overall meaning? This ambiguity is the beauty of megastructures. You don't need to understand in order to immerse yourself. The environment does that for you. While there definitely is a cryptic and underlying story present, learning it is an optional experience and ultimately relies on the interpretation of the player. The same sentiment can also be cast upon Blame and the fictional universe of Samosbor. A grand scheme or story is not the overall focus of such works, but rather invokes the feeling that you are part of something much larger than yourself. A story or plot that is beyond our comprehension, and this perfectly leads to my second pillar: scale and perspective. The notion of scale is the core element of putting the mega in structure, something so large that comprehending it becomes almost impossible. In this way, our perspective is confined to what we actually see and hear. We can look into the horizon yonder, but our perspective stops there. We interpret what we see and not what we think exists beyond. Much in the same way humanity gazes into open space, we note that the universe exists, but understanding it is simply beyond us. Humans are a naturally curious species, and exploration is simply part of human nature. But when something is so grand, exploration becomes meaningless, directly attacking our curious nature. Without knowing what exists, you almost begin to feel a sense of vulnerability. Are you the only entity to inhabit such a structure, or is there a much larger order of life? This is exactly what drives our fear of the unknown. The Blame manga takes full advantage of this element. It deliberately makes you feel small and insignificant compared to the environment. In many of its art panels, it focuses more on showing the megastructure rather than the characters, offering a unique zoomed-out perspective. In this way, Kili and his allies seem almost like ants, exploring an overwhelmingly large world. It takes away the human scale of things, as many things we know the scale of, such as a bridge, building, or room, seem to lose their familiar measurements. A bridge can span thousands of kilometers, a room can contain an entire civilization, and a building such as that shown in the Samosbor horror universe can stretch almost indefinitely. And this is exactly the sort of unease we feel when looking at something so grand. It challenges what we know and understand, completely flipping it on its head and offering us new perspectives of scale, stripping the very thing humans are most comfortable with: control. This leads us to the third pillar: the stripping of control. As with curiosity, control has always been part of our human nature, as it is designed to reduce uncertainty and ensure safety. In many ways, it is an ultimate survival tool, as it creates a sense of predictability for one's own personal surroundings, power, and control. These two things become completely stripped when facing the environment of a megastructure. We tend to feel helpless, unknown to our environment, and safety becomes almost an illusion. Once again, our human nature is directly challenged. An evolutionary trait that has dictated our survival and dominance ultimately becomes irrelevant. The concept of control is something deeply embedded within the Samosbor universe. Although humanity inhabits a seemingly endless apartment block and attempts to establish control through the party and its liquidators, control in this sense is not the same as conquering, but rather surviving in its bare form. The party cannot control the megastructure, but rather are the ones that have to adapt to its conditions and consequences. Samosbor events cannot be prevented, but rather contained. It is a losing battle for environmental dominance, and humanity is forced to understand its patterns and dangers, otherwise they will succumb to the consequences of the purple fog. On the other side of the spectrum, the story of Blame focuses on where humanity lost control of the city eons ago, leading to its builders to automate without purpose or intent. In this case, this megastructure as presented outgrew the presence of humanity, which ultimately became its own dominant force. So no matter how you spin it, the inability to control a megastructure widely contributes to the feeling of insignificance and helplessness that is attached to being inside one. And lastly, perhaps the most fascinating thing about megastructures is not their lack of context, size, or complexity, but rather the feelings they invoke. The sublime and existential horror of megastructures. Horror is a very loose term in this context. It is not your typical horror with regard to fear or terror of something hostile, but rather encountering things beyond our level of comprehension, things that we find magnificent in a frightening way. Megastructures perfectly encapsulate these feelings, being left in a state of awe and fear, the realization of the extraordinary, endless corridors, never-ending floors, and landscapes that disappear beyond the horizon, the feeling of insignificance. And this is ultimately the beauty of it, the fact that you are intertwined with something so alien and cosmic that it fits itself between horror and beauty. In many ways, megastructures explore the limits of humanity, the fact that we cannot explore or be in control of everything, as some things are just beyond our reach. Instead of looking down at an ant in the grass, we have now instead become that ant, simply observing and attempting to comprehend a much larger world. The universe of Samosbor creates sublime horror through being forced to confront something much larger than yourself and your ability to control it. Blame creates sublime horror through witnessing its impossible and grand architecture, and Abrasion creates sublime horror through the exploration and uncertainty of an unknown environment. These three chosen examples of megastructures all are unique in their own way, but ultimately embody a core underlying principle, the sublime and existential horror of megastructures. Thank you for sticking around to the end, and I hope you learned something new. To those that have followed me from my previous videos, this style of content might be a slight departure, but it is something I plan on exploring more in the future, so let me know what you thought of this video. Thank you once again, and I will see you all very soon.